So you can note that we have an amended agenda.
Mr. Chairman, I move that we approve the amended agenda.
Moved and seconded to approve the agenda as amended. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? I call, thanks for joining us, by the way, those of you that, Mr. McPherson and Paul Clark are both joining us through Zoom.
You bet.
No presentations, recognition, or correspondence. Item 5A, Dr. Copeland, resignations.
We received a letter of resignation from Deb Burke, who has been the Canton counselor for some time, and I think math teacher before that.
She's like,
Social, sorry. Anyway, she's done a great job. I hate to lose.
I move we approve the resignation of Deb Burke at the end of the 2020-2021 school year and thank her for her years of service.
Second. It's been moved and seconded to approve Deb Burke's resignation effective the end of the school year. Thank her for her service. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? She's quote by there. Okay. Item B.
Item B is just to consider hiring as an activity XPD coach to Shayla Rudd, the second track assistant coach. They had at least 29 just a couple of days ago. That's the number that we have in policy to hire a second assistant.
Mr. Chairman, I move that we offer Shaylee Love contract for second assistant track coach SHS for the 2020-2021 school year.
Second.
Okay, it's moved and seconded to offer an activity XP contract to Shaylee Love, second assistant track coach at SHS for the 20 school year. All in favor, say aye. Opposed?
Item C, consider offering an activity XPD contract to Sandy Basinger as middle level first assistant track coach for the Canton for this track season.
Mr. Chairman, I move that we offer activity extra duty middle level first assistant track coach for the candidate for the 2020-2021 school year.
Awesome. All right, it's been moved and seconded to offer an activity extra duty contract to Sammy Basinger, middle level first assistant track coach at encampment for this school year. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Item D is consider offering an activity XPD contract to Stephen Priest, middle level first assistant track coach at HEM for this school year track season.
There's a note in there that it's been advertised for many months. Didn't really have suitable applicants, so Stephen.
We'll see.
Chair, I move that we offer an activity XPD contract to Stephen Priest, middle level first assistant track coach, HEM for the 2021 school year.
Second.
Moved and seconded to offer the activity XP contract to Mr. Priest, middle level first assistant track coach at HEM for this school year. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Item E is consider hiring Courtney Priest as a middle level other assistant at the junior high level for HEM for 2021 school year pending certification.
Chairman, I move that we offer the activity extra duty contract to Courtney Priest, middle level other assistant track coach for HEM for 2021 school year, pending certification.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to offer an activity XP contract with Ms. Priest, a middle level other assistant track coach at HEM for their school year pending certification. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Lastly, Mr.
Item F, we have a resignation letter for you to approve from Ian McCreary, effective at the end of the 2020-21 school year.
So moved.
Second.
It has been moved and seconded to approve the resignation of Ian McCreary, effective the end of the school year. It's English here at the circle. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Okay, moving on to item 6A, superintendent report, Dr. Copeland.
All right, I'll just run through my report and ask for Sally's help when we get down to the legislative update to see if I leave anything out or she would like to make other comments. But item 1, the enrollment figures. We are 4 less than last month. We were 589. We were +4 from a year ago, so pretty stable there. You see those numbers. Item 2, Dan Mayer, Region Fibrosis Director Dan Mayer will be at the May board meeting for his annual report and to request a mill levy there. Just put the spring break dates down, March 29th through April 2nd. Here pretty soon. Item 4, COVID update. Just wanted to give an update on a couple of things. One, our COVID situation is really pretty good. We have 1 staff member and 2 students that are home on quarantine at this point. Something could have happened today. I didn't check this meeting, but I think that's pretty accurate as of the current. So much improved from past months. I went back and looked at a little data from the beginning of the year just for information purposes. We had, since the beginning of the year, we've had 27 student positives and 27, believe it or not, staff positives. So the percentage is a little different because we have a lot more students than we do staff. So students came to about 4.7%. Staff came to whatever, I can't remember what that was, 14% on it, just because we have about 190 staff, opposed to 600 students. So that's an update just on some data. We can get more data and I can compile more of that. If there's some of those numbers, you want it divided by campus, by community, whatever, we could do that. Nikki's done a great job, our district board, in keeping all of that compiled on the spreadsheet. All the quality. I can get that information should anybody want it. The other main update is we're moving forward with proms, graduations, and concerts for the end of the year. They're setting those dates, making those plans, and we're moving ahead with those. So just to get that information out. State basketball tournament, congratulations to the HU Lady Miners for their appearance at the state, qualifying for state tournament. Special congratulations also to Saratoga Panthers for their finish as the state runner-up. Exciting. And, very good team that played in the state final, I might add, up to. We need to set some dates. We don't have to do it right this minute, but we'll need to set dates for the salary benefits committee meetings. There's normally a date for the committee to meet and then a date for the public is invited to kind of hear recommendations, and then all of that will come to the board at the May meeting. So we're just needing over the next spring break and all, we'll need to set some dates. I can do that by email and come up with some suggestions to those committee members. Who's on that committee? I meant to write that down. I forgot.
It's Sewell, Miller, Western, and Con.
Okay. So all of you do that, I'm sure. But anyway, you want me just to come up with dates and email them out to the board and we'll go from there. That's fine. And then item 7 on the legislative budget update. I don't know that I have a lot more information than when I sent out the board briefs to you on Friday. They did not meet today due to all the snow in Cheyenne. They're not meeting tomorrow. I don't know for sure if they'll add those days to the end or just make up time. The dates are set to be done by April 1st. So I don't know if they have the leeway to change that or not due to weather. But anyway, a couple of things. There's a lot of moving targets. There's a lot of things going on right now. Sally and I appreciate her help. She listens as much as she can, and I listen when there are either committee meetings or session floor sessions so that we can kind of hear if there's any amendments or discussions. There are some concerning amendments and ideas. The Senate's kind of approaching it from more of a cut mentality, whereas the House is approaching it from less cuts and, you know, some suggested revenues. It doesn't really sound like the revenue side's going to have a lot of chance of passing, or the suggestions, just from the discussion I've heard. The Senate's cuts total about 150 to 180 million, as best anybody can figure, somewhere in that vicinity. Earlier in the year, out of the recalibration committee, you know, they set about 100 million, and then they gave each district kind of what to shoot for. So there could be more cuts if that whole thing were to pass. The House side has more in the tune of a $50 million cut, so less cuts than the 100 million, but they have some other things. How much of that is going to pass through all kinds of the floor sessions and amendments and first, second, third readings, pretty questionable, all of that. The last amendment that was done in the House by Representative Hallinan had a couple of, well, one really, well, both are kind of concerning, because they're making central office expenditures, not just personnel, which we're pretty much close to the model. We're close to the model on the central office expenditures, but they're also putting, they want to make, or that amendment is to make that categorical with a ceiling limit. I mean, just a hard cap. That wouldn't affect us so much, other than some unknowns that come out of central office, like legal expenses and some things like that. So I don't know how a cap would work on that if you have an unexpected something come up. But anyway, they'll work all that out. The other one that would probably affect us a lot more than that is a category, making activities categorical and also putting a cap on that, an actual cap. Not that you can use your reserves, but just a set cap. So that would definitely affect us pretty big time, because they've reduced those expenditures per ADM already. So there's some things we're watching. There's some things we're not for. You know, I'm not personally, I don't think making things categorical is a good way to go. I think better idea is to have a block grant where there's flexibility. But really, there's just a lot of ideas out there right now that are kind of floating all over the place. Some of those amendments won't make it. One interesting thing on the Senate side that's a little unique, at least I hadn't heard this, is that they want to make the central office positions figured at county level ADM, and then the state superintendent would allocate those positions to all the districts within that county. So a lot of unknowns of how that would look, how that would work, but that's from the Senate side. So Sally, and the other thing that I would mention that's been mentioned before, both sides are making insurance a reimbursable as opposed to based on FTEs. So that would definitely be a cut, and I'll let Sally, she has looked up and done a little bit of background on how much exactly that might affect us, but I'll let her address that and anything else she wants to add from her listening and discussions with business managers.
If you get your legislators here and you want to talk no categorical grants, no reimbursable things, but if they go to the categorical grants, Dr. Copeland has reiterated basically what that would mean to us as far as limits. Doing the reimbursement for health insurance would cost our district between $200,000 and $250,000, because they would not reimburse for employees that don't take our insurance. And we have on the general fund side, that's not special ed, we have about 20 people that don't take our insurance out of our 135. So we have that many people that don't take insurance, so they're not going to give us any money for those people. Our average insurance cost for the people who do take insurance is about $20,000, between $20,000 and $21,000. The state health insurance cost in the model, or payment in the model, is $16,800 and something. So we're already spending that little bit, about $4,000 to $5,000 over what the model spends on that. Gives us on average per person, but that's made up in the amount that we get for those people who decline coverage with our district. So if they take that away and just reimburse us for what we actually pay at the state level, we're going to lose about $200,000 to $250,000 in funding.
So part of it, before we pay the insurance, which is a real tax benefit to employees, and our salaries may be a little lower than the districts, but we have a better insurance, at least part employee portion. So
One thing on the Senate side that I forgot as far as talking categorical, they're making all of the teachers' salary model funding categorical,
To reimburse the.
which really wouldn't affect us a lot, but it would affect some districts that pay way above the model costs for salaries.
And what they're doing, whether in both the bills to some extent, both the Senate file and the House Bill 173 is to raise the class size from 16 to 1 in the lower grades and 21 to 1 in the higher grades to 18 to 1 and 23 to 1, which is, that's not saying that's what's going to happen in the classroom. And Representative Simpson's has investigated that, and he knows the actual ratio is closer to 19 to 1 statewide, if you look at it as statewide. So in practice, we're doing about 19 to 1 in those lower grades. So the funding, the 16 to 1 is a funding mechanism, not a dictatorial thing that says that this is what you have to have in the classrooms. So if they did that, that would lower the number of teachers that you would get. But then they want to turn around and raise the average salary in the model from, or the base salary from 37,000, I think it went up to closer to 40,000, which is where we're at. And it would just make it, basically what Representative Simpson's, I think, I don't remember if he's a rep or a senator. Anyway, what Simpson's amendment would do would be to true up the model to what's actually happening in the state. So that's a good thing. I think, in my opinion, that's a good thing, to true it up to what's actually happening. And then you have these, you know, and basically it would get rid of the quote unquote ghost employees. We don't have any ghost employees. All our employees are meat and bones and real people. But in the bigger school districts, they have what they call ghost employees because they're funding for 200 teachers and they're only employing 175.
And that's how they raise their salaries higher in the model. It's like a Gillette or some of these districts that have higher teacher salaries. That's how they do that. Really.
So House Bill 173 is not a bad bill as it came out of committee under substitute number 1. But the amendments that they're proposing to it on the floor are the ones that are doing the categorical grant and those sorts of things. And so all of the amendments coming out, if we have to take a cut, the substitute bill number 1 took out the $100 million that's spread out by A&M. It took that away and put in these other pieces of the class size and the raising the teacher salaries, but it included the reimbursement for health insurance. Okay, instead of being in the line. So there's good and bad in substitute number 1. But the amendments to make things categorical, to get rid of the one-cent sales tax, are not necessarily good things. And the dust hasn't settled yet. There's still a lot going on. And like Dr. Copeland said, they didn't meet today. They're not meeting tomorrow. So keep your ears to the ground and listen to what's going on. What's happening the end of this week and next week is really going to be when all the rubber hits the road. Do you have any questions that I can not explain very well?
So, you know, the first number we saw was, you know, roughly 100 million statewide. If the Senate's at 150 and the House is at 50, I mean, are we, if you had to guess, is the likelihood that we're gonna meet somewhere still around that 100 million-ish?
I would imagine, I'm optimistic that the House will stick by their guns. We've got a little bit of support in the Senate. Senator Rothfuss from Albany County is very supportive of substitute bill number 1 in the House, but he is a recalibration committee member. Larry Hicks is not there yet. So if you talk to Larry, you know, and what did he say, Dr. Copeland, that we're his favorite district because we're really close to the model?
He is, at least from the comments I've heard in the committees, he leans toward making everything categorical. In other words,
Yeah.
if this is what the model says, this is what you spend there. So that's just kind of where he leans.
So if you wanted in his ear, talk to him about what the damage that categorical is going to do. It's going to take away your power as a school board to decide where you spend your money. If the state wants to tell you where to spend your money on for schools.
Which I've emailed them about that. Probably good.
So get in Senator Hicks's ear, Representative Burkhardt, if you know him, he's on that cut bandwagon. You know, and if you know Senator Rothfuss from Albany County, pat him on the back, say good job, stay in there for us. Representative Summers from over at Pinedale, keep in his ear and tell him to keep fighting. I've sent them emails and said, you rock, keep going, keep fighting. You know, just to encourage him, nothing more than that, just keep at it.
Representative Harshman's another.
And Steve Harshman, yeah, Steve Harshman from up in Trumbull County. Senator,
Might not hurt to put that on this, Sally, if you don't mind after this meeting. Let's just, for all of us, put that in an email, maybe just a few comments. And as far as what you know, like what they're sensitive to, or some, you know, it's just like praising or correcting people. If you praise people for what they're really good at, or, you know, strengthen their strengths, and, or if there's a little tweak, maybe we don't have to exactly use that, but it might be more helpful. Like, I'm not gonna remember exactly what you said today.
Yeah.
But if you put that in an email with just a few notes about each of those people,
okay,
and that would make it easier, I think, for us, or, you know, if other people in the district, parents, principals, that wanted to reach out, it might help facilitate that.
okay, I can do that. And just, you know, keep in their ear the substitute bill 173 is Albert Summers' brainchild. And he's worked really hard on putting that together, and he's adopted even a piece of Howard Man's amendment from committee, not the one that's out there now, but one from committee, a piece of that, and he's adopted part of Simpson's brainchild, and so they're coming together. And so House Bill 173 is really good. It's helped to be tweaks and get rid of the categorical stuff, but that's the main thing from the board is, you know, let us decide how to spend money on our schools. Instead of you telling us.
Not one of them.
Local control resonates with this.
Yeah, I think so. An example that came out of, you know, the categorical type of thing is one to limit the superintendent's or administrator salary. Is that 130,000 including benefits or something?
So it doesn't include everything. It doesn't include health. It includes like if a district gets a car allowance or housing allowance.
Okay, I thought it was tax.
Some districts do that.
So you look at, I mean, that handicap's the big districts. So if there's a max cap, why wouldn't you want to be the superintendent of Kermit too instead of Trump? Yeah, it's the same one.
Well,
Stuff like
Representative
that.
Wasserberg did, or is it Senator? I get it.
Senator Watson.
He made the point that I thought was a good one for them, not necessarily affecting us, but, you know, said the district that we're meeting in right now is looking for a superintendent. You're not going to get one for that. You're just not, it's not market value. So.
And if you look at other industries where you supervise like 300 employees.
And education required and all that.
Right. But that's just an example. Thank you. All right, no principal reports this time. Let's go to item C, Robin Brown, special ed update.
Short report this month. Just for where we're at, for number wise, we are at 106 active special ed kids, which is down 2 from last month. We actually just lost 2 more today that moved, so that's going to go down even a little bit more. We're currently evaluating for initial IEP 6, and it says down later in my report that cutoff for the timeline for our initial evaluations has come and gone. So we won't be getting any more new kids unless we have kids move in after this testing cycle is up. And I explained last month, that's just, we have a 60-day timeline. And so that gives us time to get those evaluations done and see if kids are eligible for the end of the school year. I think we got attached the special ed handbook that I've been working on. It's just kind of going to be a guide for our employees and then any new people that come in you know, the IDEA is a federal law, but every state kind of interprets it different, has their own laws, and then on top of that, in our district, we have our different procedures and policies and things that go into it. And this is just gonna kind of answer questions, so everybody's doing it the same way. It'll make it easier for those of us that are district-wide, if what's happening in Hannah is the same thing that's happening in Hannah. So that's ready. I'm going to get that out to employees and have a little training on that at the beginning of next year.
It doesn't, mine, it's not.
It is
attached to mine.
not
It's
tonight.
I have
Okay.
to apologize.
That's okay.
I will
Maybe-
send it out.
Yeah, just,
Okay.
it's just.
Yeah, we could do that. And then just, if you're looking through it and have questions or anything, just get hold of me. We just got done with our 684, which is a state report that we do 3 times a year. Pam Schroeder kind of takes the head of that and does a lot of the work for it. Michelle McWayne helps get that up, the information on Power School for us. And it really just looks at our at-risk kids, our student to teacher ratio, graduation rates, all of that kind of federal requirements. And it kind of is a lot of work. You have 3 or 4 different spreadsheets that you have to upload into the system, and then it spits out if there's any errors. So if something doesn't populate right in one of our programs that we use a Power School or Set Advantage, then it comes up with an error and you have to figure out what's going on. This year was a little bit more difficult because of our CBDE kids. When they came in and out of that program, it kind of threw things off a little bit, so we had to go in and manually enter some of those, but Pam did a really great job with that, got that done. And then really the only other thing is just kind of a Title IX update. I'm sure most of you saw that the Biden administration is kind of looking at that, so we just went through and did all of the training and have updated our policies and looked at all of that, and now they're going to take a look and maybe change things again. So we'll see what happens. They said it will probably be, you know, summer before they even get anywhere at earliest. So we'll see if things are going to change. We need to update anything like that. Kind of short and sweet this month. Do you have any questions?
If you refresh my memory, Title IX.
That's like the sexual harassment.
Oh,
And they had changed it, so there has to be a coordinator in each district. So, yeah, we just got done with that in December, I did the training, so. All right, thank you.
Okay, curriculum report, Mr. Manning.
Chairman, members of the board, my report is attached as usual. And we can put X on the floor so that when we come over, we can be talking memory. You're like right there on the edge.
Oh, that's good. That's excellent.
That's okay. Curriculum, I don't have a curriculum update really, other than the fact that I mentioned a social studies committee I'd like to put together to talk about elementary social studies curriculum, postponing that because of lack of interest, which actually makes a little bit of sense. The principals and I have talked about it, and we got teachers that are required to teach so much time in ELA, so much time in math. Where do we squeeze in another subject? So I'm thinking right now to try to pull together at least the committee members, the individuals who expressed interest in, and just maybe see if we can try to drum up some additional resources for the teachers that we have at their fingertips. I was never planning to say, hey, let's buy another curriculum set and just throw it into the mix. But I still think some teachers kind of took that as great, more work to do. And we don't want to put that on them, even though, again, we do have standards that we are expected to meet. They're never assessed though, so it's always one of those situations where people just say do it and then they never didn't do that much anymore. But so I will update you as we get a little bit further along into that district assessment system update. There's not really any worthwhile update of that other than I had a PD session just last week with 4th grade teachers. They took it upon themselves to institute some new science curriculum materials that they'd like to incorporate into their teaching, which is fantastic. So we worked a little bit on that. And then I need to put together a PD session sometime in the near future, just because they requested that. Assessments, so I've done some more work in the last month with the state CTE team, just about the future of our required assessments for our post-secondary readiness score, which is a part of the school performance rating, the SRPs. And I can't remember whether or not, honestly, I told you this last time, but just a little information on that. When our schools are scored every single year for a number of data factors, like how many students, how many seniors we actually had graduate, how we did on YTOP, et cetera. One piece that they're putting more focus on is, did students either get a passing ACT score? Did they get a passing ASVAB score, military readiness? I think I talked about this a little bit last month. And if not, a third option would be, did they pass one of our CTE program assessments? So the ACT score, just for your information, students have to get a minimum of 19 composite score to be considered passing ACT, more or less, with the state. ASVAB, the military readiness, they have to get a minimum score of 44. And then if neither of those happens, and it does, honestly, it happens with some of our students, then we need to make sure that they pass one of our CTE assessments. That way they get counted for us instead of against us for how we're just performing as a school. If a school's SRP score gets low enough, then that means the school has to come up with a corrective action plan and just take a lot more into consideration so that the state doesn't come down to them and say, you're not a performing school the way that we expect you to perform. So I've been working with the CTE team on that. And I think we're good to go with all these assessments, except for our tech course, Mr. Boltman's course at SMHS. I think we just need to figure out exactly the kind of assessment to pick. It gets a little tricky with some of the subjects, just what we have available and what the state has approved for that. Big update on the winter YTOP results. So we have the individual student results from the winter YTOP, which took place pretty much at the beginning of January. I think we started testing the second week back from break. So that information has been shared with teachers, and I came up with some pretty extensive, I guess, summative reports that I put together for the principal's sake, really. Different than a previous report I shared with you, because I know I've shared previous reports, and I'm pretty sure if you look at them long enough, you'll start to see little magic eye symbols pop out at you, because that's how much they really don't make much sense. So I came up with this new idea, and I thought this would be great. This would be so easy to understand. And then I showed it to a couple people, and no one really understood it whatsoever. So just try to spare you the details of that and just tell you, if you remember with YTOP scores, we've got 4 different score categories. Students can either get below basic or basic. Those are bad scores, or they get proficient or advanced scores. Those are good scores. The reason the report gets really confusing is we simultaneously want our bad scores to go down and our good scores to go up. So then when people start looking at it, they see that there's there's scores going down and there's scores going up, and it's confusing which is good, which is bad, etc. Long story short, almost all of our students across the entire district, with the exception of maybe 1 or 2 grades, which just kind of hit neutral ground, all of our students have made growth in ELA and in math. Sometimes it's been as high as 30%. So 30% of the bad scores went down, 30% of the good scores went up. Sometimes it's even higher than that. I think the highest scores we got were up to 40% of growth. When you look at the scores of our entire district and each of our schools and compare it to the same numbers across the entire state, we are ahead of the state in certain grades and certain subject areas. We are honestly either at level or even a little bit behind the state in other areas. A good thing I think to keep in mind is that our principals have that information. We're talking to teachers about how to, I guess, really intervene in the case where our scores are a little bit down. But these scores are from a test that was given pretty much at the very half of the year. So they're being tested on some things that they still haven't learned yet actually in the classroom. This is a measuring tool to make sure that we are moving our kids towards the direction of success with the summative test at the end of the year. And if we have negative scores, and obviously that means that we need to be doing a little bit more. If we have positive scores, that's something to get excited about. But I also think you take it with a grain of salt, because some of those questions, honestly, the kids haven't learned that information yet. So they could be guessing by all means. So it's a good way to kind of dip your toes into how we're performing. It can be a good way to say maybe we're doing some really good things, maybe we're not doing some so good things, but really we won't get the full picture until we actually take the summative test at the end of the school year. Hopefully that makes sense. If you'd like to see those reports, I'm happy to pass them on to you. I just say, let me know either when I'm done with my report, or you can send me an email and I give those to you, as well as an explanation exactly how to read those. So nothing's panicking you. Beyond the Y-top information, just doing some more work with our computer science requirements. So we are expected to be fully implemented computer science in our classrooms K through 12 by the 22-23 school year. We've got one teacher that's almost finished up getting their minor to teach computer science. Got another teacher that I've been working with lately, getting him involved with some things the state's offering as an alternative to getting a minor. And then a third one, we're trying to figure out whether or not some previous courses that she took would qualify for computer science. So been doing some work on that. And I think the last thing I bring up is, two more things. I've been working more and more on the state reports I have to give next year when we get audited, essentially, for how we're spending our grant money for Title II and Title IV, and then just numerous purchases just to prepare us for next school year with all the consumables and things like that. That's my report.
Thank you. It was nice to hear you.
I was thinking the same thing. Yeah, it's nice to hear.
One of our board members was very polite last month and told me that I sounded like the teacher from Charlie Brown. So,
Yeah, if you wouldn't mind, I'd like to get that.
absolutely. Yes.
No, if I can't understand it all.
I'll send you the explanation in the data report, and then, yeah, if there's anything I need to clarify, just let me know.
Oh, yeah.
Yes. Okay.
Just
Yeah,
to-
but I want mine to,
Just
I
sit
want
down.
mine color coded though.
It is actually color
Oh, good.
coded
I like
in
to see
hopes.
that.
Just make sure you find the key.
No, I have to put it right behind it. I'll just tell you a lot. That's fine.
All right, thanks, Tom.
Thanks.
All right, item 7, audience, public comment. No, the general public comments.
Christy.
My name is Christy Murphy. My daughter goes to Saratoga Elementary, and I was wondering if the school board is going to consider lifting the mask mandate for the kids at school, because the governor has listed it or removed it when it expired for the state, and I just was hoping that you guys would take that into consideration, because kids are going to see adults out in public without the mask if they have to wear them at school. That's just one thing I just want to bring forward. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate that. Yeah, we'll discuss we amended the agenda to have a discussion of where we're at with smart start plan and the items from the board because of, some changes. I don't know that we'll take action on them, but we'll discuss it in the direction the schools might be going. Thank you. All right, item 10. Oh, actually, there is no unfinished or new business, so we'll skip those. Item 10, consent agenda.
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion we approve the consent agenda as presented.
Second.
Moved and seconded to approve the consent agenda. All in favor, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. Thanks for hanging in there with us, Paul.
Nope, no worries.
Item 11A, treasurer's report.
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, your general fund balance at the end of February was $5,321,050.39. You see there in section 2, your major receipts from the State of Wyoming Foundation and the Carbon County Treasurer. And section 3, you see where your monies are dispersed and invested. Right now, the major portion of our funds are invested in WyoStar, which gives us the best rate, which is with the State of Wyoming. Do you have any questions regarding your general fund balance? On page number 2 is the financial report of your other funds. You see there your grant funds and the different grants and the various balances at this point in time. You see the comparison between February of 2020 and February of 21 payrolls. You see your scholarships, there were no new scholarships issued during the month of February. You see the balances, expenditures, and revenue for your employee benefit fund, your major maintenance fund, the capital construction fund, your depreciation reserve fund, the lunch fund, the encampment activity fund, the Hannah activity fund, and the Saratoga activity fund, and also that the Midville lodging deposit account has gone to zero. Do you have any questions regarding the balances or expenditures in revenue funds? Did you have any questions regarding the summaries for your expenditures and revenues that came out with your bills lists? As I said, we're currently looking at where we need to tighten our belts as far as legislative action and what's coming down the pipe, so there'll be more coming forth on that. I will advise you at this time, I have received the increase for health insurance and Celebrate. Carbon 2 is only at a 2% increase. So yay. The high increase was 14% and we fell at 4% and then the board brought down to 2, brought down every percentage by 2%. So our health insurance is only a 2% increase, which is awesome.
Good news.
Yeah. Okay. That concludes my report.
So Bills and Committee and I met with Sally and she answered our questions that Joe didn't even have any, which is right. So I move that we approve the following bills. General fund, $232,059.27. Federal fund, $78,675.22. Major maintenance fund, $56,534.98. Hot lunch fund, $30,961.24. Retainage fund, $15,308.90. Encampment activity account, $4,383.62. Hannah activity account, $1,184.22. Saratoga Schools activity account, $5,956.59, for a total of $425,064.04.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to approve the bills in a grand total of $425,064.04. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. Thank you. April Bills Committee will be Miller, Westring, and George. All right. So moving on, so items from the board, I think, the discussion of Smart Start Plan is item H. We'll reverse G and H. So we'll leave board member comments. Item A, review board governance leadership tab 2.14. Dealing with board orientation, professional development. Any questions, concerns about that? I think we'll talk about this a little bit when we go over the board self-evaluation. Covers a little bit of this. None. All right, item B. These three policies and exhibits were approved on the first reading of the February 17th meeting. They will need a second final reading to be finalized. ACA is the sexual discrimination and harassment. Any questions, comments, concerns? This is the second reading. We will need a motion.
Chair, I move that we approve, should we do these separately?
There's the two others are just.
Just exhibits for it. I think you can cover
I think
all.
you can do them all.
Yeah.
Okay, I recommend that we approve policy ACA ACA 1 and ACA-2 on second and final reading.
Second.
It's moved and seconded to approve policy ACA and exhibits ACA E1 and ACA E2 on second final reading. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Okay, item C is to review the board evaluation for the whole board portion. I took the average scores for everybody, put them on the line, and then if there were comments at the sub level, I tried to just write them on the line next to the particular question. It looks like in the text I put like a cuss word next to the lowest average, with those two asterisks. And I want to congratulate Karen on being a ray of sunshine and having the highest average score, which
It's unlike me.
shouldn't have been a surprise to anybody. She's pretty sad. I had the lowest average score. Got on the back that day. Who knows? Thank you all for getting those to me. So I just want to go through them and kind of highlight maybe some good points, some bad points. If you guys have any questions, comments, that'd be great. Obviously, anything that, and just keep in mind, doesn't mean we're in compliance. That doesn't mean we feel like we're always doing it well, perfectly. We're just doing it, in compliance. Not compliance or one, didn't get any ones. We got some twos and some areas that we sometimes follow, sometimes don't follow policy. The first one is general board as a team. Overall was decent. One of the overall comments for this section was, on a whole, I believe it works the team for the betterment of the district. There's a couple fours in there, a couple lower areas. Number 5 there, the board's open and honest with each other. And there was a comment that sometimes I feel like there are ulterior motives sometimes. And then the other one on number 7, the board respects the interests of the entire district rather than any special interest groups. That comment was, sometimes I feel drug into a different group and it's hard to say no to anybody, in a particular school, because you don't want to be looked at as the bad guy or gal or couple that rated a little lower there. And if you guys want to stop me on any of this, just holler out. I'm kind of looking at the computer, so I'm not really looking mostly up at hands and stuff. So, board superintendent relationships. We should have asked. I thought about this and didn't ask Dr. Copeland to go through it and see if he had any, if he wanted to rate it or have any issues. But I don't want to hear a bunch of negativity. That one ranked, I thought, pretty well overall. It wasn't any 4s. They averaged, I think, pretty well. And it's more about, are we in compliance with all the boards are supposed to be. 3, policy. One of the lower ones here was, and I think it's a continuing challenge, is number 2. The board involves administrators, teachers, staff, students, parents, and community members in the development or review of board policy. The comment there was not sure how to get all parties involved. Get input from those parties every time we do a policy change or.
Doesn't the BAC go over anything, or did they do anything on policy?
We talk about any topics that come up. I don't know that I've ever said, do you want to talk about a particular policy, official, formal policy? But I mean, what we talk about has to do with policies. That is one avenue that parents, staff, and then team all have input into. We could certainly use that. For example, if the board wanted us to address a particular policy, we just let them know at the beginning of the year, any time. I could bring it up to the BAC. We could probably be a little more effective, but that is one avenue we use generally.
Okay, another comment there on number 4 is about the board periodically reviews and updates board policy according to an established plan. Comment there was no specific policy review plan. They're aware of. Okay.
Doesn't Dana have a plan? She puts them on the agenda, doesn't she?
That kind of came, I think, from, I think the first year James and I got on board. We went to that training over in Rollins, and she said, no, who's that lady, Sue? Bellish, yeah, she told us to just bring policies, like 2 or 3 policies up each meeting. And that was kind of the plan at the time, right, Joe? And then I don't know, I mean, and as people have come on the board, I'm not sure they knew that was kind of why these are on here. As we started
I
doing
think
that.
she's just kind of going to work.
I
Yeah.
thought that within this last year, we have gotten off.
Some different
both-
stuff,
Both because we needed to add new policy and as well with the change in meeting schedule. But we are towards the end of going through the entire policy manual, a few policies per month.
Yeah, and at that time we do that, it'd probably be good to just sit down and have a prioritization of what areas, some areas of focus that we should do. How far away do you think we would be to go through it?
Just don't know right offhand. I think we're close to J, so it might still be like a year off, but
That's not terribly far.
no, because I think it's been happening for quite
Within
some
about
time.
a year,
Yeah.
we'd be through it.
I would think so.
Okay.
If we get back on schedule.
Then we probably at that point would need to kind of decide if we're okay with finishing that in a sense, but then we need to set priorities, reprioritize.
We'll make the board evaluation.
It says on there. Can you read that?
No, I didn't.
Also, people from like North Dakota.
Yeah,
We use it. Why do we use it? That's probably the one question.
I think is it a state adopted tool?
I think it's twice what I say.
Yeah, WSBA.
I feel some of the things like we don't do, but Dr. Copeland does or Dana does. I think it's kind of like that with some of the superintendent stuff though too on the thing is Dr. Copeland like doesn't put out the curriculum or whatever. He has Noel do it, but he oversees it kind of. As an example.
Meeting responsibilities. I think that one tended to be reasonably high score across the board. And there was one thing to your point, there's a lot of areas here. So once you pay close attention halfway through, it may be tough to pay full attention all the way through score. Planning, number 5. One of the comments there on number 3, board establishes yearly expectations for student achievement and regularly monitors progress towards those targets during the school year. It's kind of here what you said, Karen, that same type of thing. Board doesn't really set student expectation targets, at least the way we're currently operating. That was a comment there. Not super high scores in that area. Not terrible. I mean, 3 is mostly in compliance, so in theory, anything over 3 is acceptable. There's only a couple in this whole thing that were under 3. Instruction. This one was a little all over the board. Certainly some lower ones here. The first one, the board sets a clear direction for the district by establishing the district vision, mission, goals, education philosophy, student achievement targets for the instructional program of the district based upon the needs and values of the community. I particularly read those last 2 words, but that was scored not great, 3.22. This number 2, as the asterisk is by it, the board provides a quality educational program proposing high individual academic achievement standards for each student. Comment there is if there's one area I think we could do better, it's pushing our students academically. I got 2 asterisks, a lower score. Number 3, the board provides alternative instructional programs for non-traditional students that got a lower score. And it's pretty safe to assume that anything that got those asterisks as well, to get that low a score, they're going to get some 2s in the ratings. Number 5 there, the board only adopts recommendations from the superintendent regarding changes to the instructional program after careful study of all available data. Budget finance. Generally good. There's a couple lower ones there, the 3.22s. About providing the superintendent with the board's priorities for development of the budget for the year based on evaluation of existing programs. And then about the board encouraging input from staff, students, parents, and community members throughout the budgeting process. Didn't score quite as well. Personnel. Mixed bag, you know, there's some pretty good scores and one of our lower scores that on number 7. The board has a process for encouraging suggestions from staff for improvement of the school system. And that was a comment there that was part of the BAC function.
Which some of the surveys that we do kind of gave us some of that also.
Labor relations. And we're good with our labor relations. Labor may not think that way. But that one generally scored higher. Also scored, maybe it's towards the end, people are wearing down. Student services. That one also an area that scored a little bit higher than average. I would say. Felt like if we're compliance. Again, in compliance. That doesn't always mean we're doing awesome. It's just policy. Number 11, facilities transportation. Yeah, I mean, I guess you would expect that one to be a little higher. It's hard stuff. I mean, physical hard aspects. It should be. 12, community relations. Definitely a few lower ones in here. Number 1, the board keeps the public informed through regular newsletters, reports, and contact with the media. And then number 5, the board actively participates in programs which build good community relations. The only one in there that really got above 3.5 was the number 4, that the board holds public hearings on important issues before taking final action. The community things that probably range. 13, board member orientation, professional development. And the last one, definitely some lower scores here. What are many 4s on this whole evaluation about board member orientation, training, professional development? Number 1, the board has adopted a plan program to orient newly elected or appointed board members. The comment there was no house new board member training. We have it, it's on the website, we maybe just don't implement it as well as we could. I know, you know, Joe is the chairman, again, real passionate for that, and they did a good job with that. Better than I do. So, number 5 is another lower one there. The plan explains the educational relationships between the school district and state educational agencies and entities. Again, back to orientation training. Certainly missed out on some of the, you know, the board stuff with some embellish board member training stuff. A lot of you haven't, some of you haven't got to do that as much as some of us do. Number 8, board subscribes to read professional publications and educational periodicals. That was definitely one of the lower rates. And then the last one, board uses further data research and consulting services if needed. Any questions about, any more questions about the board self-evaluation?
Are we gonna have to do like an improvement plan or something?
Yes, that's next, and it was a little bit backwards order. So, I mean, I think some of the point of doing this is self-reflection. I mean, and we talk about this as a whole board, it's our average scores, but that's the point too of the individual. One thing that really got me on the individual assessment was, one of the questions was, do you spend more time thinking about business of the board in the meetings or talking about educational results? Which one do you spend more focus on? I know for me, business is a lot easier because that's what I like and what I do 90% of my time. So, I mean, one of it, that's just an example, Karen. Somewhat the point of doing it is introspective. They get you to think, you know, am I doing what I'm supposed to be doing?
Do you think all of the questions are necessarily stuff like the board does, or that may not even need to be on there? I mean,
I would kind of question some of it just because there's some balance between what a board's function is and what the day-to-day operations of what's going on. But it's good to reflect on it, but there could be some other WSBA forms that could be more current. Maybe, I mean, I don't know, I'd be glad to reach out to my phone and see what's on there. Yeah, see what they would have if somebody wants to not have one so extensive. I counted, there's 102 individual items, 2 school averaged under 3. I mean, that's not really bad. No.
No, but like you said, a lot of it.
I counted
Day-to-day
positive because you
operations.
did it. That's why I was a ray of sunshine, because you do most of it. Sorry.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, there's some daily operations things that are really good.
It's not our job.
Okay, well, maybe that's something to know for next year to see if there's a different evaluation.
It might be maybe an opportunity in the workshop to go through this.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay.
Edit, adjust.
Any other comments about the board evaluation? All right, appreciate you guys doing that. So here, Karen, this is the part that, this is like put the cart before the horse thing that we should have done the board evaluation earlier, and then you use issues from that to develop board goals for the next year. So this is a learning opportunity for somebody who's chairman next year to do it in the proper order. But you can always learn from things that aren't done well and be like, I'm not going to do that again. So the review of the board goals is the next thing. So in theory, you do the board evaluation and then you use some weak points in that to set goals for the coming year as there is improvement. That's how most organizations work. So just a review again of our board goals we met or talked about from our last work session. Was number 1 to be more attentive in all attendance areas. You know, attend extracurricular activities, attend school lunches, attend programs and banquets, communicate with administrators so we don't mess it up. Keep Mike from getting mad at us for coming over to school. Evidence and complement being at a functional activity for each school at least once a year. That's meant to be separate from the board meeting. So I think, you know, that addressed a few of the areas. Obviously, this number 2, I think, probably addressed the weakest area that we had in that board self-evaluation. Is board of trustees will participate in educational opportunities, workshops offered to them. The SBA, the legislative forum, which just got canceled. Subscribe to that American School Board Journal if so desired. At least 1 online and 1 offsite training. I think if you looked at any profession, the most common complaint is, I don't know how to do my job. I don't know what's expected of me. That's pretty common. So you would generally expect that area most evaluations. Doesn't mean it should be. It's just. Any questions, comments about the board goals? Okay. The special meeting date to consider the teacher contracts, Dr. Copeland.
Well, we need to have that before April 15th. And our regular April meeting is after the 15th. Yes, our regular board meeting for April is the 19th. We have to notify anybody in writing by April the 15th. So we really need to meet, and I said the 7th, 8th, or 12th, really the 6th, 7th, and 8th would be a lot better as far as having that meeting. Hopefully by the end of the session, we kind of know where we stand, and then we contracts with some knowledge. And then, of course, Dana put the notice in the paper and all that. We could have that here or over at the central office now that some things have changed, whatever you all prefer.
Hey,
We're gonna have to post it anyway.
Bill, are you listening in on this? Is there any of those dates that don't work for you?
Yes, can you hear me, Mr. Chairman? All three of those dates do work for me. Thank you.
Anybody else?
The 12th is the only one that works for me. My phone.
So the one that doesn't work for me.
Don't feel up on me, but
The 12th will not work for me. That is a rec board meeting night.
About the 7th, Wednesday.
Nick, what about?
7's good for me.
6th or 7th.
I'm out of town from 5 to 10. Could I join Zoom? I don't know. Yeah, we can set it. I don't know
It's iffy.
whether I'll have good Wi-Fi service where I will
You
be.
could call in too.
Okay.
We typically have meetings on Mondays and Wednesdays, so for me, if it's on a Wednesday, but if it can't be on a Monday, I'd rather do it Wednesday because that's our other day.
So we want to.
Otherwise, I'll show up.
I don't know.
April 7th, anybody have a problem with that at 5 p.m.? Central office?
Yeah, that'd be easier, especially if you're gonna have a call.
Yeah,
That's not cool.
okay.
Wednesday, so
Wednesday the 7th at 5 p.m.
That's at central office.
Yes.
Yeah, and so make a note of that. Like, yeah. So that's a special board meeting to talk about and so the only thing we should have to do is talk about that, go into executive session about that issue. Okay. F, Georgia.
I don't have anything additional to add. I just had Dana attached to the report. This is the report that Dan has been doing it for us for the last few months. So if you guys had a chance to look over that, just kind of talks about what he's doing, what Region 5 BOCES is doing, and then he will be here in May to meet with us.
All right, thank you. Okay, let's skip down to number H. Discussion of where we're at in our Smart Start plan. You know, obviously, part of this stems from Governor Gordon issuing executive order that there's no more mask mandates or restrictions in the state of Wyoming, excluding K-12 education. One of the weak points, which several people pointed out at the beginning of the Smart Start, so we basically had to adopt the Smart Start plan to go back to school. The rest we couldn't go to school. But one of the issues is there's no tier 0. There's no tier 1 is where we're at now, or the first level. There's no lower level. And when that got adopted, there was no expectation that vaccine would be out, which we've now offered vaccine for our staff, 2 rounds. There's just, I just want to have an open public discussion of where we're at, you know, regarding that, because there have been some changes based on the fall. So I just want to give that introduction, and then Dr. Copeland can give his thoughts, any thoughts related to that. Board members can give their thoughts, and then we can just have a discussion. Basically, what I would hope to get out of this is, there's some things that have changed that weren't in place when we agreed to this contract. So what directions should we give Dr. Copeland, administrator of this district, going forward? Is that fair? Okay, you can start, Dr. Copeland.
Well, and I don't know if any of y'all got a chance to read my thoughts on it, in which I kind of put together in the last day or so after James and I exchanged some emails and back and forth.
Real quick, let me just say one thing. Part of the reason I want to do it now is rather than us have just a bunch of emails back and forth, I mean, I think it moves us to have an open public discussion.
And, I'll be glad to elaborate or not. I mean, one of the reasons I just wanted y'all to have a heads up, and I shared this with the principals too, just to let them see kind of where this discussion, at least from my perspective, I told them y'all might want to hear some of their perspective. We'll hear your perspective on the whole thing. And mine really doesn't have to do, I'll be honest, it doesn't have to do with arguing the logic, the consistency or inconsistency. I totally agree. It's been all over the place since the beginning as far as directives that we're having to follow. So mine is for, I don't know what, to talk about it this quick, I don't know, and I'm not saying we're doing something different tonight, but I don't know the repercussions from a protecting the district standpoint of going against the governor's orders and the health orders. Would that, what would that actually cause? Could we, so I'm looking at it from that perspective, not from the standpoint of, does it make sense to lift everywhere to the schools? I wouldn't disagree with some of that. I'm totally ready for masks and all of these things to be lifted, and I'm glad that we can go to restaurants and all start tomorrow with just kind of back to normal. So that's not where I'm coming from. I guess I'm just coming from looking at it like I've always kind of done in my role as superintendent. What are we setting the district up for possibilities? If the board votes to go their own way, kind of like Pinedale did Thursday night, are there repercussions? Is state funding at risk? Is accreditation at risk? Because right now we're operating under this plan that WDE has approved. We were told anyway, that's how we were able to open, and that's what we're expected to do as a school. So I just don't know where that puts us as far as repercussions go. When this happened, and I read that article from Pinedale, I sent it to Kevin Mitchell and the other superintendents just to say, hey, are y'all hearing? This was news to me that the Pinedale's board voted this way. So I got back quite a bit of just input. Most of them had not heard about it. I mean, it just happened last Thursday night. The superintendent at Lyman said that his board was meeting tonight to discuss the same thing that we're doing, just to at least discuss it. So I guess, I kind of would like to see where we stand legally, what all of that could mean or not, where that puts us as individuals legally, if we go against, a state order. I mean, I don't know the answers to these. One reason, Bill unfortunately couldn't get over here on I-80, but he's here and he can hear us, so I'd love to hear some of his thoughts. He and I kind of talked about it. So I'm just kind of explaining where I'm coming from my protective kind of mentality of the district, not the logic of the directives or lack thereof themselves. So, I mean, I'll be glad to elaborate. I don't want to just reread the whole thing because you probably all read it. But if you have any questions or points that maybe I'm missing, I'll be glad to talk about it. I don't know, Bill, if you would have any comments, or James wants to hear those. At some point, probably let Bill say any input he wants to say.
We pay him to protect this stuff, so.
But that's what I've been coming from. I would like to at least have the time, whether we go through, applying for a variance or whatever. That does give us some time. Kevin Mitchell did, and I forgot to say this, he did talk to State Superintendent Judy Balo and her assistant Nikki Shaner over the weekend just to see if they had been aware of the Pinedale board's action and what their response would be. Well, they're closed today and they're not meeting. They can't put out any guidance until later in the week. She said that they would put out some, but in the meantime, she would suggest if we wanted to go a different direction, to at least pursue the variance right at this point. So that was fair. And I read all three.
Yeah, let's agree, it's a public meeting, so that's part of the point of it. I mean, anybody on the board that has a thought or comments on how the district should move forward, or any thoughts or.
Mr. Chair, I'm sorry, to interrupt. Mr. Chairman, I do have some thoughts, and I'm happy to visit with you after all the board talk. But I just want to make sure at some point you give me an opportunity, because I do have some things I'd like to visit about. Thank you.
You'll have to pay us for that portion. Yeah. Well, yes, that would be great. I think it would be imprudent on our part to not be here. Yeah, go ahead.
Go ahead, Karen.
I would like to do a survey or something of all the parents, kids, and everything that this affects to see. I mean, if you're gonna push something and go against the grain, if you were to do that, I would want to know that the vast majority of the community stood behind something like that. I think that would be important. And to do a variance or whatever it is, I think we have to think about what we do before we do it. But to have the input of our constituents to know they think this is what they want to do. Then if there are repercussions for what we do, if they were made part of that process.
Well, I don't know, you guys haven't seen our email exchange probably that we've had amongst the board, and so there's a lot of different variables that we're dealing with now that we weren't dealing with last fall. I mean, we have vaccines on board of people who want to have vaccines or, needed to have vaccines, whatever the case may be. We've got kids that have bear this burden, let's face it, and so have teachers. This has really become a school burden, this virus. I'm not sure why, because the public's out doing what they want, myself included. But the kids have really bared this and shouldered this weight. And so have teachers, so have principals, staff, whatever. Three, I don't think that our board is like Pinedale, and I have some friends up there and they're shocked, either yes or no. And if you don't know what happened in Pinedale, their board voted to get rid of the Smart Start plan last Thursday night, and it shocked people. I don't even think their superintendent knew they were going to do it. Some were for it, some were against, but it was 4-2 vote, and there was one guy that was gone. I don't think that this school board is that type of a board that would go against what the people that are working for education in this district. I don't think we're that way, but I do think that as elected officials, and I told this to the board, status quo and just following on, this whole plan that we started is dangerous for us sitting here. Maybe not so much for you guys sitting over here, but for us, because we're the ones hearing from parents, from grandparents, from other elected officials. And so that's what I put in my email is, I think status quo is a dangerous place for us to live. And we need to probably hear some input from parents, from students, and obviously, Darren, that's probably not going to include a whole lot of your students, but the secondary principals from staff, from that A team. But I think we need to have this discussion, because if we don't, for us people sitting here that were elected on a ballot, that is a dangerous place to be. So that's why I can understand Sublet 1 just kind of going with what they thought was right. I don't think how they proceeded was great, but I think that we do need to have a conversation and possibly some changes. The variance, I know that Niobrara won, I think. Is there only one over there, Jim? Yeah, I know that to start out with, they actually did try for a variance. They didn't want to do it at all. And so they put a variance out there. And they got a little backlash from it. It's not horrible, but a little. And it's probably worth talking to their superintendent because their board was not happy about it. But they didn't get anything like, we're gonna pull your funding, we're gonna change your, you know, if anything will happen to your accreditation, any of that kind of stuff. They just heard from Jillian herself, the state health nurse, etc. So I know that that's out there. I would be super interested to hear from sublet people. And I tried to call a couple, well, my in-laws live up there. My mother-in-law was a teacher, but she didn't know. I mean, she had heard of it. She didn't know what was going on. I tried to call a couple of parents I knew up there.
They're in the process of a superintendent change.
Yeah,
So I just took it since they didn't quote the superintendent, Jay Harnack has been a
he
superintendent.
probably wasn't even
I
there.
bet he wasn't there because they quoted the principals, but not him, so I was wondering. if he
That's
was-
what my mother-in-law thought, was he wasn't even at the meeting. So they just kind of flew by the seat of their pants on that one, but. So anyway, that's kind of what I sent out to the whole board as an email, just so everybody knows, and that's my thoughts on it. I'm kind of like Jim, I'm not here to debate what was wrong, right, or how we did this. The whole country went through it. I'm more, let's try to focus on our local control. School boards pride themselves on local control. So let's try to stay within those boundaries as we move forward on this. And hopefully next year we aren't even having this discussion. So that's all I have to say on it, which was a lot.
Go.
Yeah. So, number one, I think there's a proper way to appeal to authority, which is recommended by Dr. Copeland to, let's try to do this without being confrontational to begin with. And I agree that we need to gather all the data before we're just making a decision. If there are going to be legal ramifications, let's gather all the data so we can make an informed decision. I think it would be improper to make a decision tonight just because there was not enough. I mean, we just added this to the agenda. So anybody who wanted to speak on this issue, they can't. So I think, possibly in the next board meeting with the proper setup on agenda announcement. So anybody who wanted to speak could come. Then we can make a more informed decision.
I would echo what Joe said on many respects. I think if we take the proper channels, that would be best effort to best foot forward. The questions I have are, has the plan as implemented been effective? Because that's part of the data that I think that we need to establish. And like Joe said, it's part of the information we need to make a good decision. So has it been effective in keeping kids in school and keeping, transmission rates down and getting the job done? It's our primary goal, the education process going. So, and then thereafter, do we take a hatchet to this thing, or do we look at it with a scalpel? Dissect parts that don't apply anymore, but be able to reflect and look back at the information gathered here and say, what has worked? Because it's not just the mask issue. There's cleaning issues, there's procedural issues, there are all sorts of things that have gone into this plan that have moved the needle on this thing, or not moved the needle. So I'm with Joe in the sense that I think it would be very hasty, or it would be foolish to make a hasty decision. We need more information. That way.
Yes.
Yeah, I agree with so much of what's already been said. Just really needing more information to make a decision. I really keep thinking, I have my own personal beliefs, and I just have to keep reminding myself, like, what do I feel like are the best decisions for our students? And so it just kind of brings me back around to just really needing more information, like everybody's kind of said. What are the consequences, if any? And just getting a lot more input from the stakeholders. I really value that. We've heard so many comments, especially at the beginning of school. But I also agree to some extent that what we've been doing has worked and we've seen the results. And I think we've had a pretty successful year regarding COVID. So I think we need to be, not grateful, and I don't mean that in that we should be considering this. I'm really thankful that we are in this position at this spot and that we are taking the time to evaluate this rather than even just sticking to the guidelines that we're talking about it regardless of what that outcome is.
Yeah, I agree. I think the evaluation of it is a good thing, a good topic of discussion. Because obviously we know a lot of people were wondering, especially after the final article, will we do something? I don't feel like we should follow suit just because they did it. I think we should, like you said, talk about local control. We need to know what our schools think and feel, and if it's sticking to what we approved at the start of the year and finish out the year because it's working and that's what we need to do to get our kids through the rest of the year, then I guess that's what we should do. If it's something that, we need a variance or whatever, then we need to look at possibly doing that. I'm just looking at the approval that we got from the WDE at the start of the school year. And it just says, on the whole harmless period will only last for the duration of the health order. And if you receive notice for a variance, then you must notify Dr. Will about it at WDE. So, I think we should follow that. Plus, like Dr. Copeland said, if we're going to move forward, apply for the variance, go in the proper channels rather than just deciding.
One comment too, I thought I've had is, with some of the changes from the governor, if it's going to make it harder for you guys, particularly secondary, to enforce masks, if you're going to get more pushback or not. And just some comments like, if we have rules, I think we got to follow and enforce them. We can't be like, well, I don't want you guys to be in a position either as the principals of deciding whether to not or to enforce the rule at your discretion. If we think things have changed, like, we now have vaccine, we now have things we didn't. Instead of choosing to follow or not follow the rules, which is one of Jim's points, number 3, when do we decide? I think if we feel like some of the rules need to be tweaked, make the change to the rules instead of not enforcing the rules. Because I think then we get into disciplinary issues, we get into differences across schools between teachers. So rather than kind of put the weight on, and that's one of the reasons I want to discuss it. So we're not putting the principals in a bad spot, having to enforce things that maybe they're going to have a harder time enforcing, because then just the point that, yeah, you don't have to wear a mask and go to school now, and maybe get some more fines and rules. So that was part of the reason I wanted to talk about it. I guess that's just a belief I have, that if the rules, it's better to change the rules if they need change than to not enforce the rules.
It obviously doesn't make sense that he removed it, because then, the kids are out, we're all doing the same thing. They're not wearing masks except for when they go to school. So it's like, it really doesn't make sense. And you can see where the kids might come across and be like, this is not fair. Why do we, whatever. But I totally agree with it, what James says. Like, I'm kind of a rule follower, but like, if there's a rule, it needs to be followed, and and if we need to change it, then we need to change it.
Karen did a good job too. She didn't talk about it when she talked about it. And it goes back to what Nick said, gathering the data. That it has been, it's great. We have 2 students and 1 staff on quarantine. That's great. And that's part of our school, but it's also part of the broader, community changes. And so there's been some great things about we're still going. But like Karen said, there's been some negative things about nutrition and stuff that's happened. But in terms of some of the school meals, because they're prepackaged more as opposed to made from scratch. And so we've missed an opportunity to focus on, healthy lifestyle, healthy diet, exercise, fighting COVID versus just relying on fear and vaccine. Like, I thought about this before the meeting. My kids, they've won the president's physical fitness thing multiple times at Saratoga Elementary School. Do I have any fear of them getting this? No, because they're healthy, active kids that eat a good diet. Like, the COVID is just one thing. There might be another thing and another thing next year. So Karen had a great point that I think we've missed a real opportunity to talk about healthy lifestyle choices and individual responsibility as opposed to mandates and vaccines and masks. She did a great job, so I wanted to.
So like, if you guys have a lot of backlash since the mandate was lifted for everything except school.
It just happened, didn't it? Like,
It's supposed to happen tomorrow.
It's supposed to happen tomorrow.
yeah, but is this making an issue out of a non-issue?
Kids, but I feel like the mask police, but you ask them to put it up, they put it up. I think like Dr. Cook, he shared his document with us, and it has a lot of issues, and probably secondary would deal with more than elementary, but the amount of time they really wear them is basically the hallways, you could go in that argument, how effective are they? Heck, that argument was before school even started, but I think the big picture is we got kids in school, we're still in school. I'd like to hear what the lawyer has to say more on the legality part for us, or who does it fall onto? If we don't fall.
One of the things that I've done when I've talked to the public or the students, and I've made a point to do this with the students, especially secondary students, a lot, is there's a lot of misconception about what operates the school in terms of COVID. And it's that Smart Start plan. We got a lot of folks that don't know that we even have that. They see the governor's orders and think that's what the school should be doing. 2 minutes after it goes into effect, you have to educate them and say, look, we're using the Smart Start plan. I've spent a lot of time with our students, especially secondary, telling them that and saying, look, I don't expect that anything's going to change for the school year. I think the duration of it is what the health department and the Department of Education is going to tell us to do. And I told that to the staff at our staff meeting last week. I said, I preached with them all year. We put aside our personal feelings and belief because the main goal of this year has been to keep the schools open and in person. And so I haven't had a huge amount of backlash on it. But I think if we start screwing around and saying, well, maybe this, then we'll start getting that. So, I'm with JD, when we talked today, the biggest thing I asked, the question was, I need to know legally where I stand. Am I supposed to be following guidance that you give me or the guidance that the Department of Ed gave me? And I don't want to put in a position where I have to choose between the two.
Dr. McPherson, Bill, I'm not remembering Doctor. Ready?
Hey, real quick, guys, if I could chime in here real quick. I think that was Mike that was just talking. I heard his songbird voice loud and clear. I agree 100%. I think we need to have our admin and our teachers with a clear path forward, not even open this door up to any kind of a discussion right now and follow this SMART plan through to the end. We're realistically looking at 2 months, 2.5 months of the school year, and we're done with it anyway, and hopefully something will change. Nick brought up a great point as far as the custodians, as far as the bus drivers and stuff like that. Think about what kind of a predicament that we would be in if they keep trying to sanitize everything that the way that they're doing, and we're walking around without, our masks and stuff. Nobody wants to throw them off and throw these masks away more than I do, but I haven't been personally affected by the COVID either. So, maybe we should, if we want to go down this road, take the time to visit with the people who have been affected by it and see for sure what their thoughts are on it. That's all I got. Thank you.
Thanks, Paul. All right, Bill.
Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Well, and so first, thank you for letting me appear by Zoom. I apologize I couldn't get over there today. When I received this information, this is going to be something to be discussed tonight, I wasn't sure what the atmosphere of the room would be and where the board would be. And so I made my notes and I wasn't part of any discussions really prior to tonight. So I made my notes, I guess, with the thought that maybe this board would go to where Pinedale went, although I didn't really expect that from this board. And I really appreciate all the board's comments. I think you guys are spot on as to where you need to be. But I guess I'll go ahead and go through my comments and kind of, these are bowed towards if the board were to at some point decide to ignore the public health order. Doug Mason, who's quoted in the Pinedale article, indicated he's the attorney apparently for Sublette County, that he didn't know what the legal consequences for the district would be. And I guess somewhat unfortunately, that's where I'm at. There's really no precedence for what if a public body determines to ignore mandates from WDE and mandates from the Wyoming Department of Health, where we end up. But I can give you maybe a few comments or concerns I have. Wyoming statute 35-1-105A, subpart I provides it's a misdemeanor, so it's criminal, if any person willfully violates, disobeys, disregards the provisions of any Wyoming public health laws or the terms of any lawful notice, order, rule, or regulation. Certainly the 33rd amendment that goes into effect tomorrow that you're talking about is a public health order. And so potentially, and I don't know if our county attorney, I can't imagine our county attorney would prosecute that, but a violation of the public health order is a criminal offense. There's an issue of liability. We always throw that out, but it's a real issue out there of health risks for kids, teachers, the public. Although the order doesn't necessarily make full sense to me like it does for everybody else, I assume the Department of Health has some basis in which to base their order requiring masks for students and not for the general public. If we're going to put that aside and try to do something else, we ought to have some basis. And this is what the board's already talked about. And that's why I appreciate your conversation. You ought to have some factual or scientific basis for why we're not going to follow that. If we choose not to follow a public health order, not only could there be liability issues, but there a willful and wanton violation of some type of order like that may be an exception to our insurance and maybe an exception to the general rule that of immunity for school districts or for public entities. So we may be out in a no man's land if we violate these types of orders. Jim's already talked about this, but part of the Smart Starts requirement is dealing with the WDE. Again, who knows what may happen to Pinedale? There's funding issues, accreditation issues, and quite honestly, you have to deal with WDE on a day-to-day basis. And although we have local control, we also have to deal with WDE long-term. And I think, as you guys have already talked about, there's a right way and a wrong way of doing this. So I had my legal advice is that you go through the proper public channels and ask for an exception, which you've guys already talked about. If you do that, I think you need to involve WDE, because we're not just asking for an exception from the Department of Health order, but we're also asking to modify our Smart Start, because as you're all well aware, the Smart Start did require the wearing of masks, and I think it also requires us to follow any mandates of the Department of Health. So that's kind of my laundry list of concerns I have. And if anybody has any questions, I'll be happy to try to answer. Thank you.
Thanks, Bill. Another thought I had, and it kind of goes back, I had this weekend, echoes Mike's comment that, so we think about the students too, but the other thing is the staff and the teachers agree to come to work under the Smart Start plan too. You know, they agreed to start the year under that, so it makes, you know, you have to gather input. And different circumstances now than there were at the start of the year. There were vaccines then, we have different rates, things are going well, but the staff also, you know, students agree to it, we agree to it, but the staff also agree to those protections or expectations. More thoughts?
Well, I just had thought of, if we make a decision at the next board meeting, then there's only a month and a half left of school.
Right.
You know, so I mean, we want to put forth, or ask Dr. Copeland to put forth all the effort to draw a plan, to ask for variance when, you know, there's lots of other things he's got to do too.
It's true. So one of my fears, Joe, is this is a never-ending and changing mandate. So that worked last year, so let's just do it next year. And then, oh, we had less absences because of seasonal flu and healthier students. And so, well, that didn't hurt that much. You're not really wearing a mask that much, and kids didn't get sick that much. And, well, you know, what's the big deal in just doing it next fall? So that's one of my concerns about.
You always have something to hang over your head, like being able to go to school. Where do you draw the line and when to look into it, when to push a little bit?
Mm-hmm. And so part of what, and Casey mentioned this too, is so I think in the email, I don't know. So part of it is, you know, so what example do you set for students? You want to follow the rules, you have rules for you to follow, but also if things change, do you work towards changing the rules or questioning? It's okay to question rules.
We get it all.
I know, we get it. So it's okay to question rules and say, okay, the situation has changed.
To me, there's a difference in, I'm all for questioning, I have no issue with that. Again, I'm kind of Georgia, I was raised, I'm kind of a rule follower, that's been my whole training, really. But to me, going through channels that are accepted as basically proper procedure, legal, whatever, is the difference between questioning and working to change the rule. And in my opinion, what Pinedale did was just basically defy the rules. They're just going to say, we're not going by it. And that may be a way to go, and they may get totally away with it. I just don't know what. So where is that line then for our students and for our general, all of our philosophy of generally we obey the laws and we teach our kids that, you know? So there's that conflict that I kind of have about this whole thing. And I just think we need to be careful about the way we move forward with it for a lot of reasons, which I put down. So.
I just wrote in my email, what you're referencing is the kids did it because my kids do what I tell them to do.
Exactly.
You know, but I also, they know, JD knows that my kids have questioned him a lot, you know, and I want them to be those people. I don't want a bunch of little drones in school, just heads down doing what we tell them. I want them to question you and Mike and Stephen, you know, about this math stuff. And I actually sent JD an email and he read to the high school and middle school kids here what the mandate was changing and what it wasn't, which I appreciated because, you know, those age of kids are questioning it. They're leaving school. As they walk out, take their masks off, they're together. You know, there's families that are going on spring break trips in a week to wherever. And so that's a huge issue for me to say, well, the kids are okay with it, so let's just keep going. I agree, there's 2 months left, and is it worth the trouble? I don't know. And are kids wearing masks that much? I don't think so. I mean, but I think that we need to question this and in the proper, and I said right there, I don't like what Suba did. I think they blindsided their whole, you know, their whole team. Nobody even knew what was going on. So, I just think
James
it's,
made a good point too. We're assuming this will be done at the end of this year.
yeah, but,
Can we totally assume? We don't know really. We
Yeah.
assume. But I mean, that is a good point to be made and to know.
but I think our kids are following the rules because we have stayed in school. And so if that's a question, I don't think we've had an issue with that. And maybe we have, I haven't heard of one, so.
I guess, so this is just my personal thought of, after hearing the rest of the comments here is, I guess I would encourage us to put it back to Dr. Copeland and the A team to come to us with some suggestions. And we can provide input or our thoughts too, but if there are some areas that we should apply for a variance or not, or I'd like you guys to meet, and give us a suggestion. Or we'll hear from you. I mean, we don't, I take it, we don't, obviously the board does not run day-to-day operations of the district, but it's to direct and approve. I don't want to write out anything or write any wording on anything or have a, you guys are the ones that came up with the WDE Smart Start Plan and the verbiage and the wording and put the words to it. So, any other take on that or?
So I guess, just to be clear, where I'm supposed to go.
Well, I want to hear what they think, or what their thoughts.
I think.
Or is it nothing, or just you're happy and don't have a waste of time?
I think it would be prudent for you to look into it, you and the A team, and not just say we've got 2 months left, because what I'm hearing, what James is hearing, what I don't know on the other board members, parents are calling. They're wanting to know, why is there masks in the school? Exactly what Mike said. They don't, I mean, we put it out there. They knew there was a Smart Start plan, but they didn't pay attention to that wording. So I think it'd be prudent to look into, if we do absolutely nothing, we at least, you know, made an effort. But I think it's worth looking into because we have constituents that we hopefully protect you guys from a little bit that are asking questions, you know, so it's worth your time.
And I appreciate, one Christine Murphy is her name.
Yeah.
So
that's my thoughts.
I would like to have them look into it, and I would like to hear from parents and students as well. Just have a broad perspective. The problem, I understand that they run and operate the school, but there's a whole different look at, I mean, a lot of theirs is protecting them from getting sued. And I don't think necessarily that's the way you should be looking at it. It should be being looked at as what is in the best benefit for the kids. And a lot of this stuff has not been for the benefit of the kids because the kids aren't even eating their lunches. How healthy is that if the kids aren't eating lunch at school until they get home at 4 or 5 o'clock, they're not eating. We need to make some changes somewhere so our kids are healthy, so they're not going to get sick and do what's right for them. I think that should involve the parents and the students should be part of that process.
We have an opportunity to look at this from like a very science-based or logical, take the process of logical inquiry with this on all aspects, the data, the health information, challenging the policy. If we don't like the results that we're seeing doing the way that we're doing it now, what is a different hypothesis and how do we establish that and measure it? And then what are the logical processes we do to challenge these, these processes that we're seeing? So, and I think that's part of any curriculum, science curriculum that we would teach and encourage. And then, there's the civics aspect of it as well that we've got to exemplify across the board, as a board, as an administration, as a school staff. Just look at it from that standpoint and look at results and look at how we change things logically. Our processes and our hypotheses, we should be able to tackle all these issues.
again, I know I mentioned this earlier, but I do think it's in our best interest to kind of go down this rabbit hole and keep investigating and asking the questions and making sure we're on the right path and making the right decisions. So I definitely think that it's worthwhile for Dr. Copeland and the A team to keep looking into getting us answers. And if, I do feel like it's a lot of challenges ahead of us if, depending on how far we want to push. But we know what those are and we can make the best decisions.
I guess I'm gonna lean a little bit the other way. Just hearing from what you guys have said and kind of what you're getting from your kids and your staff. I'm not sure how much, like the data and all of that, Dr. Copeland's kind of told us a little bit of what's going on. Obviously, we've done pretty well. We already have this plan in place. We're dealing with a lot of other time-consuming things as far as the budget and all of that stuff at the end of this school year. I'm not sure how much, and then of course they have so many other things going on in school. How much time do we need then to devote to gathering all this information when we have this plan in place? And I would say I'm gonna almost lean a little bit more towards we'll reevaluate it before the school year next year. And then if we have to apply for a variance or whatever, because we don't feel like they should go back to school with masks because of our data and because of what's going on, and have another tier in there maybe to say, okay, we're going to start school with no masks, but then if we have to change it, depending on what the orders are, I'm not really sure, but like, I just don't know if I want to force them to put in a bunch of extra time for, I don't know, by the time we get all this data, we have a month left of school. I don't know, that's just my feelings on it. I totally agree. I don't want them to have to wear masks, but there's a lot of other things going on in the school year that these guys devote a lot of time to.
Hey, real quick, guys, does the Smart Start plan that we're looking at right now expire at the end of this year?
I haven't looked to see if there's any expiration. I don't know. I don't remember. So it says in the eight valid.
What'd you say, Mike?
I think it's only valid for this school year.
That's.
So theoretically, by the time that we put forth the effort and everything to go through this, the school year is going to be over and this thing's going to be null and void anyway.
Can we find that out for sure?
I would have to check, and I can find that out.
There are at least certain components of our Smart Start plan that would not be valid according to state statutes. And that's specifically with the virtual education aspect of it.
Yeah.
So I can't be an expert on it, but I would be shocked that they would basically disallow parts of our Smart Start plan because of that and still say, but these parts still work. If that makes sense.
Yeah.
And I feel like it would be an all or nothing. For next year.
We can certainly ask that question, but I would assume that it's for this year. That's the indication, but I don't see a date of expiration. Just glancing. So I'm glad to ask.
Would it be, and this might be a dumb question, if it is, I apologize, but if they are going to hold it to us past this year, is there any way to ask for a variance starting 21-22 school year?
I think you can ask for variance anytime on anything. That doesn't mean you'll get it, but I think you can ask. We asked for a variance, for example, for the regional basketball to up the capacity limit, and they granted that to us within about a week and a half, 2 weeks. That's the only variance I guess we've asked for, to be honest. It's the only one I can remember.
So just like there's not necessarily an expiration, but I'm just looking at the letter that was included in our plan from Jillian Balo just totally references the 2020-21 school year. In the second paragraph.
Yeah, I see what you're talking about.
if there is one next year, I would guess they would make us write it.
I bet you're happy about that.
Well, I guess, what do your notes say from that? There's a mixed feeling there. I mean, obviously, some people don't think it's worth as much time as others.
Well, here's what I would kind of ask everyone. Number one, for example, we say we want to get input, which is totally a good thought. How does that look? Do we develop a survey? Do we put it on the website? Do we just talk to people? I mean, how do we get input? Do you all talk to people? Do we talk to people? Do we have meetings? I mean, so there's that decision. How exactly is the best way to get input? So is that just up to us to decide that, as an admin team? So there's that question I have. Collecting data, we can collect data. I mean, we've done that a lot. Discussing with the A team, we have a meeting a week from Wednesday, so that's not a problem. That can be a topic we can figure out. I can check on the repercussions, with various things, just when they open Cheyenne up again. I mean, that will help. I mean, we can contact people and ask. So, I mean, we can do those things. I guess that we're not saying we're going to do anything past that from what I'm hearing tonight. I mean, unless I'm hearing you want me to begin a variance process tonight. I don't know. That's my question. I guess exactly what am I expecting at our 18? I just want to be clear.
It doesn't seem really unanimous to start a variance process to me, and maybe there's a slight majority, but I think my take is look into it, and then the other thing is, as some of them said, that some of us think it's more worth it than others. So I don't think you're going to get a straight answer. I don't think it's like a vote thing; it's a motion thing, but. We have, if we wanted to approve any kind of pursuit of a variance, we're going to have that special meeting on the 7th of April, and then we have a school board meeting on the 19th. Yeah, that's the wait, is if it's worth doing anything for 2 months. And I personally have the fear, school districts don't push back against the state. The state's just going to safety up and do the same thing in the fall and say, well, you guys are just willing to follow that out, so just do it some more. I have that feeling because nobody wants to be sued. Nobody wants to lose their job because somebody got sick and died. Like, that's a terrible thing to happen. But people die in car crashes every day, and nobody wants that to happen either. I'm not saying it's the same thing, but I just think if there's not any push or any sense at the state that people are unhappy with it, they have no incentive to change it.
Just a reminder, if you are going to discuss it at your special meeting, you need to put it on the special meeting notice. That's going to be one of the topics. Just
Well, and if we're going to talk about it there, we probably can't, be too tight at some lines, maybe. No, that's a good thought.
And we can do all of those things without adding a ton of time, other than just, I mean, if we want to just talk to people, reach out, see what they say, or do we get Noel? Actually, Noel.
I
to
love
develop
those
another
graphs.
survey.
I think you can graph that really
I
good.
feel like our principals probably are gonna know. I mean, obviously, maybe not the people that don't have kids, but you guys are gonna know kind of what the parents feel, what the students feel, what the staff feels, more than any of us. So you guys will be able to tell Dr. Copeland, yeah, I'm getting a ton of backlash, or we're okay with finishing the school year with this. I mean, I guess that's kind of where I come from on it. And like, yes, we're happy that you're having this discussion, thinking about future, like, how are we gonna handle this, but you guys can have that discussion at your 18 meeting.
How did my kid, oh, go ahead.
I think it's tough too, because parents don't understand, as employers,
our employees have rights. And, you know, listening to Bill talk, so as a parent, I want to say, I don't want kids to wear a mask at all. But there's a lot more to this situation, like you guys have all talked about, than just simply a mask issue.
And I think there was something, Dr. Copeland, you know, if we go away from the Smart Start plan, is it like everything away? And then like we talked to Nikki, what's that do for if we do have one kid sick? Now that we're not wearing masks, or we're not doing, does that affect the whole class now that might be removed from the building? Do we, you know, are we gonna say we're not gonna listen to anything now from the Smart Start? Do we still follow some of the guidelines for it? You know, we have been real lucky, very small number of students, but, you know, is it because of math? I don't know.
Nobody.
But
There's no way to know.
But, you know, we've been able to keep our students in, and when we have had cases within a class, because of spacing, because we can say we wear masks when we're in groups, we've been able to keep the majority of classes in school. If we go away from this, but we follow guidelines from the health department, that might take a whole class out, because now they're kind of like with a sports team within $8. It was the whole sports team because of, I don't know. Those are the other questions that you start asking if we start getting a case here or there.
What is canceling that Smart Start plan do to their kids that are homeschooled up there
That are on the virtual.
that are on the virtual?
I mean, that's part of it.
Here's a thought here. You guys talk, if there's ways to edit the Smart Start plan, or things you guys think that need edited or could edit, you may come back and say, nothing, it's great, Mike. I don't want any problems, I don't want any liability. That's fine too, but if you could come back on the 7th and just give us a report, and then we could act on something on the 17th. Or the 19th, whatever the board is, if there's some, if we wanted to have a variance we approve, or some way to go, but maybe meet, and if you have recommendations, your recommendation may be, it's great, we love it. We don't want to take any risks. But we're gonna enforce it. Is that acceptable to the board? They present to us at the first meeting. I guess so.
I don't, would that, you know, because of the special meeting, I'm not sure of what the legal ramifications are. Because I think if we announce a special meeting, we can only talk about that subject at that meeting.
You put both those subjects out on advertisement though, right, Bill?
Yes, as long as you advertise what you're going to discuss, that's fine.
Might invite a lot of people in to discuss that.
That's the risk we take. It might be a
I
long
think
special
maybe
meeting.
if we just do it on the 19th rather than the special meeting on, was it the 7th?
Yeah, I think we said the 7th for the special meeting. The 19th is on a Monday. There would not be personnel stuff on the 19th that we know of today. You know, you never know that.
I feel the 7th would give us more time if we did choose to go forward with a variance or something. It would give more time to do that.
I mean, we can put it as simply a discussion item, not an action item on the 7th.
Yeah.
And that's what that was what I suggested. Yeah, John.
I was going to say, considering how kind of the more recent health orders have, well, both implemented and removed, it's kind of also that by April 7th, this whole discussion is moved. Because on March 30th, the government can say, hey, guess what?
I was gonna ask, did you know?
These go through the 31st. This current expires March 31st.
Yes, very valid point that that can happen. But I think we just need to operate on the assumption that it's not going to.
Well, if we live some orders, there wouldn't be much to discuss.
Although there's probably certain things in the Smart Start plan that, you know, we may.
Tie together.
Yeah, some of the sanitation and some of that. Check. Just list that as discussion on the staff.
Do you feel like the location for that special meeting is still gonna be fine?
Let's just do it here. We can. By then, we don't
So
have to.
here
sit-
is the.
Yeah, let's sit closer. Let's sit closer. Start tomorrow. Start tomorrow, without that. Yeah, the next thing I saw today was it's maybe 3 feet with a mask. Okay. All right, appreciate all your comments. That. This, I guess, Bill McPherson, we didn't pass any time belt type of thing to get you more hours, sorry.
Thank you.
Board member comments, I'll start, and that way George doesn't have the last word this time. So, had a great time up at state basketball, a lot of fun, to go out there and see some tough games, a little different feel without the two-way there, and without the crowd wanting to get loud. They always sit in a good seat, so we could get better seats, so that was a lot of fun. Excited about track starting and a lot of activities happening and stuff in the school. My daughter's super excited about match counts and going state match. So yeah, fun stuff happening. And just a reminder that we are able to do a lot of stuff more than, you know, people, we take for granted a lot of what other people don't.
I'd echo James, I didn't get to go to the state, but I watched it on NHS, thank God for that. But my whole family was up there cheering and spending the weekend, and our team has just been absolutely amazing, and I hate to see those 3 seniors go, but this is what happens, and new ones will come up. Thank Mrs. Munson and the kids for the awesome snacks, and I love the ag part of me loves that they figured out the price and the cost and the pounds and all that stuff that they gave us here. If you look, that's pretty cool. So thank them for that. And I guess, you know, I don't think that this board's here to make you guys' life miserable. I think we're here to challenge you. And I'm looking at you principals because that's who I'm challenging. And Jim, I challenge all the time, but I don't get to nearly talk to you guys as much. So I don't think we're doing that. I think we're just trying to keep in the interest of the communities that sometimes you guys don't get walked in the door, you know, and hear from. So just know that's where we're at. We're not out to be Sublette County one. So.
I want to thank Deb Burke for her years of service. She'll be really missed. Congratulations to the Hannah Minor girls for getting to go to state. Congratulations to the Panther boys. I was overwhelmingly amazed at the amount of people from this community that was up there. It was just not family and friends. It was elementary school kids. It was encampment was there. Dalton was there watching. Everybody came up there to rally around those kids, and I thought that was the amazing part, that everybody came up, even with all the concerns if they would get tickets or not or anything. They got in, and it was pretty awesome to just get to see that game and watch those kids play, even though they didn't win their class act kids. I'm really proud of them. Thank you to the Pro Start at Saratoga. Is it just Saratoga, or do they do Pro Start Saratoga encampment? What's that? Okay, well, I appreciated the food, and I did love the paper on what everything costs. That's so wonderful for kids to know, instead of money just comes out, or food just comes out of the refrigerator. I would also like to thank any parents that do come. It is daunting to sit here, especially with kids, or to make time to come to our boring meetings. And we appreciate anybody that will come and sit here and listen to us. And thank you to all of you guys for all of what you guys have done during this time. I know it hasn't been easy on any of you either, and I appreciate each and every staff member for everything they've done all year long dealing with this.
I join with the rest of the board, and I'd like to say congratulations to all our winter sports teams, whether it be wrestling, basketball, that they all showed good teamwork, sportsmanship, and you know, those are just really character qualities that we like to see. And I'd also like to join with Karen and say thank you to all the administrators, the staff, and even down to the janitors, the bus drivers, the food personnel, doing everything they can to keep our kids healthy, and also to that the schools can stay open. Because there's nothing better than one-on-one interpersonal relationships. So thank you guys.
Indeed, I would echo a lot of what's already been said. Joe makes a great point. All of our winter sports teams have had, you know, not just the challenge of competition to deal with, but a lot of other hurdles to get over. It's been a fun ride, and they've persevered, and it's been good to see. So, so I'd like to congratulate all of them. I'd also like to echo what Joe said and everybody else has said. Thank you guys. I mean, district-wide, the administrators, the staff members, the teachers, everybody for all of your efforts on a very challenging school year. So we can see the end of it, and brighter days are ahead, but it's a great undertaking that you have accepted. It feels, I say it every board meeting, but I feel very lucky that we are where we are today. And that feels really good. And then finally, just a great big thanks to Deb Burke for her services for a lot of years, and I wish her great luck and fortune in her new endeavors. So, thank you guys.
I agree with so much of what's been said, or everything that's been said. Thank you all. Like I mentioned earlier, this year has been a huge success. And I know the year's not over, but just thank you for all you guys have done. Also like to congratulate Deb Burke and thank her for her service. She will definitely be missed. Thank you to the Pro Start program and kids. Nice treat and surprise. With basketball coming to an end, I just know I saw how much work like Michelle McQueen put in up at the high school. I just want to thank her for all that work that she did, and other people that might have also worked as hard as her. I'm not sure who did that in Canton or Hannah, but I would like to thank them. I know that was a lot of extra work, and our ADs as well. Yeah, that's all I have.
Congratulations again to all of the state qualifiers. Basketball and wrestling had some great placings in wrestling, so that was pretty awesome to see. And obviously, thanks to Deb, she was amazing. My kids' whole career at school, she was there, and so I got to see firsthand how great she was, and she's going to definitely be missed tremendously. Best wishes to Ian McCreary on his next move. And then again, you know, you guys, we tell you, and if you can just pass it along to the staff, we would appreciate it tremendously. What you guys have all done. It's not easy. You guys have handled everything well, and you kept our kids in school, which was already full. It's very important that they're in school. there's so many places that the kids are not in school, so we appreciate everything that he gets done. And James, I'm gonna let Paul end up, not me.
Okay, I'm gonna echo a lot of what everybody else said. Congratulations to the Saratoga boys and HEM girls for the state tournament. It sounds great that we had so many fans and parents up there. Also like to thank, as did everybody else, our admin team, all the way up to the janitors and the cooks and the drivers and everything else. This has been really tough, greatly appreciate it. And then also a couple things, I asked for your guys' thoughts and prayers on our HEM middle school track team. It looks like we're in quite a bit of trouble with our new coaches we got. And number two, if anybody has snow shovels, head on over to Elk Mountain. We got good use for it.
Thank you, Paul. I apologize for keeping neglecting that you're there. You can get even with me later. All right, thank you guys. There is no need for an executive session I'm aware of at this time, just on their case. So the next meeting date, we will have a special meeting Wednesday, April 7th. Here at the community center, 5 p.m. We get that scheduled to discuss teacher contracts and hear input from Dr. Copeland and the A team regarding potential changes to the Smart Start plan or none. Then the regularly scheduled meeting will be Monday, April 19th, 5 p.m. here at the community center. There will be a BOCES meeting before that at 3:45 here at the community center, also on April 19th. Meeting adjourned.